Up the Waterfall. We begin this series with a true story. The setting is an old-growth forest in the mountains of Austria, just after World War I. A new forest warden, 32 or 33 years of age, was given responsibility over 21,000 hectares, or the equivalent of close to 52,000 acres, of remote, untouched forest. This man spent endless days studying nature, and he was especially fascinated in studying the properties of water. One evening, under a clear and moonlit sky, he sat near a waterfall, waiting to confront a fish poacher who was not yet present on the scene. The water in the pool at the bottom of the waterfall was crystal clear. He observed a group of trout scatter as a larger fish entered the pool. After much splashing, twisting, and commotion at the bottom of the waterfall, the fish stood up on its tail end, became still, and elevated up the waterfall, where it then met the top, flipped its tail, and disappeared into the pool above. Victor Schoberger pondered what he had witnessed all the way home. Over the next decades, he often observed other trout jump high waterfalls. No scientist or book of science has ever sufficiently explained how this occurs. But this Austrian man would, over the course of his life, bring a wealth of virtuous, beneficial information to the world. Only the world kept his work a secret. Through his observations regarding the energetics of water, biological systems, forests, minerals, atmospheres, geospheres, and cosmic energies, he developed technological and natural solutions to reverse problems and disasters caused by technology and imperfect, ignorant practices. We will look over his work over the next 9 months and see how it overlays and circumscribes the ideals of other great thinkers and intuitive observers in this full spectrum course. In his early days as a forest warden, Schoberger observed that trout and salmon, among other types of fish, will bolt upstream lightning fast to evade danger rather than swimming in the direction of the current. It appears that the fish experience less resistance moving against the current rather than moving with it, and Schoberger can explain to us why this is. Here is a sneak peek at one of Schoberger's drawings. I have read several essays online attempting to explain why fish remain anchored in place in a fast-flowing stream. These essays describe the scales and the gills and attribute the entire phenomenon to the negative pressure contributed by the back-spinning water as it passes beyond gill and scale, the shapes of which move the water into a whirl that assists the fish by canceling a certain amount of positive pressure at the front of the fish. But these essays seem to miss something that Victor Schoberger did not. Allow me to tell you about something very significant. Water has a temperature anomaly point, a point when it is densest, strongest, and is the most energetic. This temperature anomaly point is 4 degrees Celsius, which is 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and 277.5 and so on degrees Kelvin, to put that into perspective. At this temperature, water is at its maximum density. These fish that thrive whilst facing and racing upstream do so in water that is cool and dense. Victor Schoberger performed simple experiments by adding warmed water to the river upstream from the fish and observed the agitation in the fish's movement. The fish would tumble and lose their steady position when water lowered in temperature. Cool, dense water, on the other hand, not only glides along the body of the fish and squeezes the fish as it passes, like a slippery bar of soap. The water expands where the fish's body tapers, and this creates counterpressure, further pushing the fish against the flow of current. But there is yet more to discover here. Natural waterways will twist and curve and wind in the freest and most perfect way possible. A natural river that has been allowed to curve and bend as it may will build up deposits of soil along these banks where nutrients build up, and foliage will grow and shade those areas and further enhance the watercourse by providing protection from the direct and constant sunlight. The water in a natural flowing waterway will build up energy as a result of the spiraling vortex motion of water as it moves down its course. Water winding centrifugally like a tornado becomes cooler and denser. Water winds counterclockwise on left-hand turns and clockwise on right-hand turns. At the point where the movement becomes neutral as it changes from clockwise to counterclockwise, the ford in the sand is created. And Schoberger describes this location as an energy cannon. Rivers such as these are able to purify themselves perpetually by consolidating and pushing out impurities and debris. Water such as this can lift heavy stones, normally considered too dense and too heavy to float. Water in this condition, flowing down waterways designed by the wisdom of nature, will float large tree trunks down its courses. Rivers such as these will produce and maintain water that is 4 degrees Celsius at their center, even during the day in warmer climates. The coolness and density of the water becomes more apparent in the evening during a full moon. But there is still something more amazing to uncover here, and essential for our holistic understanding of the universe. A watercourse that is allowed to move as it needs to and form as it will over time will build up a current of energy that runs in the opposite direction of the apparent flow of water. It is this energy vortex, as Schoberger describes it, that the trout seeks and exploits to move quickly upstream and levitate up high waterfalls. It is worth noting here that each of the distinct layers of our atmosphere are divided by a layer of water vapor at this anomaly point of 4 degrees Celsius. These layers create semiconductive sheets that create charge differentials between the layers. These layers, in effect, act as a biocondenser, condensing UV energy that is distributed more widely across the largest outer layer and is condensed as it passes through each smaller layer to the atmospheric layer with the smallest area. Why is this meaningful? Is it meaningful to you? Let's hear another story, told by Victor Schoberger and recounted by me. Victor stood observing a small lake. He noticed the waters receding from the shore, and the water level began to lower right before his eyes, as if someone had pulled a plug in the bottom of the lake and was draining it. He then describes how a large log floated towards the center of the lake and then turned up on its end and appeared to be sucked under the surface of the water. Even the bark was stripped off of it. A deep rumble, like the sound of thunder, was heard, and following the steady decrease in water level, a water spout, more like a water column, sprayed from the center of the lake, and the water level began to rise again, increasing in volume until it filled above and beyond the original water level observed upon his arrival at the lake that day. How might we explain this? If you are curious and maybe sort of trust this man that you never met, he may have some valuable insight. So please continue to lend me your ear. He calls this phenomenon the archetypal expansion of water, increasing the volume of water without any inflow, as in without adding water. The word archetypal here means first, primal, fundamental, formative, and principal. This is how lakes function in nature as perhaps it was meant to be. Schoberger's personal understanding of water leads him to describe it as a living, self-organizing substance that goes through a juvenile state and a mature state and can, in many instances, die. We will learn more about self-organizing collectives as we continue this course. Schoberger describes juvenile water, or immature water, and mature water. We must first look at the full water cycle, which is wonderfully played out in Hidden Nature, The Startling Insights of Victor Schoberger, which is a book written by Alec Bartholomew. I strongly encourage you to acquire this book and have it on hand in your family library. Here is a representation of the full water cycle as studied by Victor Schoberger, and by now, others as well. Notice the depth of the penetration of water into the topsoil. Notice how the water percolates into subsoil far beneath the reaches of the tree roots, and eventually making its way to various collection areas, such as underground reservoirs, lakes, and oceans. But look at the level of the groundwater table, which you may expect to be flat and self-leveling. But as you can see, if you look close, this drawing shows the water table following the curvature of the hills. There is more to material substance than liquid and solid states in weight and density. Here is a drawing of the half cycle of water. Notice the rapid runoff. Notice the rising groundwater table. Notice the falling groundwater table as it falls beneath sea level. What is different about the landscape here? Do you notice the lack of vegetation, as in there are no trees or shrubs? Let's talk about positive temperature gradient for a moment. I'm going to label it as ideal in this instance. I'm going to label it essential as well. Positive temperature gradient refers to the temperature of rain versus the temperature of the ground it comes into contact with. If the ground is cooler than the rain, we say we are enjoying a positive temperature gradient in regards to rain and soil. If the ground is cooler than the rain will percolate into the soil and begin its long journey through the mineral layers of earth and eventually find its way back into the light, where it will evaporate or transpire from plants and collect in clouds through electrical charge and continue a full cycle. Notice the deep roots. Notice where the layer of essential mineral salts would normally be created and concentrated. Notice the accessible level of the water table. When we have a consistent negative temperature gradient in places where the ground is persistently warmed by the sun, as is illustrated here in the section between forested areas, water runs off this slope with very little absorption. The water will not pass through the layers of mineral and will not mature, let's say, properly. Oh, to be a geologist and all the specialized areas of interest and study. One wonders how these salt flats formed. Ancient oceans, sure, and yet, to look at our story holistically, one has to wonder how salt forms in the first place and what makes it concentrate. Has anyone heard of the Dust Bowl? Here are some pictures of the United States in the 1930s. The Dust Bowl was a result of repeated clearing of land for farming and stripping and scratching and scraping the topsoil repeatedly, exposing the soil to perpetual direct UV light. Vegetation, my friends, acts as a semiconductor between geosphere and atmosphere, and as an insulating blanket, regulating temperature and moisture in the soil. We will dig further into this later. The Dust Bowl describes a period of several years of mineral and moisture-depleted silt dust blowing from Texas to Nebraska. These were hard times for people. But the Dust Bowl of North America is not the only place where we see the results of mass clearing of vegetative covering. At this time, I would like to officially invite you to read the selected pages I have highlighted by listing them on the last slide of this presentation. Actually, they're on the following slide. Please write them down in your sketchbook journal. A link to an internet archive of Living Water by Olaf Alexanderson is in the reference section of this course in the ThriveCart Learn platform. I encourage you to read pages 22 through 28, 53 through 54, 55 through 59, and 98 through 106. And please read more if you desire. I would like to bring this presentation to a semi-close by asking you to ponder the significance of exploring the topics we have today. We should probably cultivate a distinction in our intellectual awareness between human systems that are artificial, as in not mimicking nature very well at all, and compare those systems to methods of creating human settlements that honor and preserve the exquisite activities of nature. Natural environments that are healthy will be evident in their diversity, their age, and inherent peaceful balance. It just feels right. These are called flow forms. Please take the next 10 or 20 seconds to closely observe the pattern of the water. These are becoming popular in natural building communities and eco-villages. They encourage a vortex movement in the water, which we will learn even more about later. Which triggers this question. If a village is not an eco-village, is it an anti-eco-village? Like, if it isn't health food, is it really food? And by now, can we begin to distinguish natural from artificial? Or premature death from sustainable life systems? What images of community living give you a sense of security and vivid anticipation of the beautiful landscapes you can create or contribute to? Enjoy learning about water. See you in the next presentation.